Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Sleeping Warrior, The Plain Truth, Iron Realm Media, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Afternoon.
Yo, yo.
Afternoon, guys.
Hello.
Hey, Randy.
Been talking weird science before the show started with Adam, which is good fun.
Yeah.
You want to carry on that conversation, or is that specifically to be off air?
You know the best thing about weird science?
Say again?
The best thing about weird science?
Kelly LeBrock?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Kelly LeBrock.
Any more than a handful, you're risking a sprained tongue.
I wonder what she looks like now, because that's got to be
Nasty.
knocking on 30 years old, that movie, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I bet she's a rotten handbag now.
Quite possibly.
Kind of like Kelly McGillis from Top Gun. Have you seen her?
Oh, she's terrible.
Who?
Yeah. She's a lesbian, too.
Is she? She's this
Yeah.
fat one thing with short hair, and she looks like Jeff Capes or something.
I was
Yeah, she's
really
bad.
hoping to talk about the hijacking of science as opposed to Kelly LeBrock in weird science, but there we go. Curvature, nonetheless.
Oh, Nathan.
Yes.
Let me just shatter a dream then.
Go on.
I'll screen share for a sec.
You're going to show us...
Are we going to have a look at Kelly LeBrock, are we?
There you go.
is it Kelly LeBrock or Top Gun?
This is LeBrock. I had plastic surgery, dude.
Oh, she's on that slippery slope, isn't she?
Yeah.
She does look like she's just had 5 lagers, though.
But, that's the
Looks
real
better
one.
there you go.
Look up... what's the girl's name out of Top Gun?
Oh, Christ.
Who?
Travis said the name a minute ago.
I know.
Nadine
It's
Schmidt?
just
Kelly
Schmidt.
McGillis.
McGillis, yeah. You wouldn't believe Kelly McGillis. It's unbelievable.
This is like just descended really badly, really quickly.
Yeah, it's old men. Old men and hot ladies from when we were young. Sorry.
It's nothing like it.
So yeah, there was nothing.
Sunglasses.
No, it's about the skin. It's about the skin you inherit, basically.
Do you reckon Tom Cruise looks at that and just thinks, no way?
It looks like my old Uncle Pete now.
It looks like me now.
Anyway,
I'm stopping.
so there wasn't any science going on in weird science. You know, there was quite a lot of technology, quite a lot of magic, but certainly no establishment of a cause and effect relationship through systematic experimentation. So it wasn't actually science, which is true.
It was definitely weird technology, Nathan. You're right.
Weird technology doesn't quite have the same ring to it. But what we were talking about before the show was the hijacking of science. So Mark Sargent read out a piece I sent to absolutely everybody, including Adam and various other people, about flat earthers using terminology that simply doesn't apply to the obvious and observable nature of our reality. The Earth is obviously and observably flat. And should I talk about no, I won't talk about the specifics that we were talking about before the show, but there are plenty of examples of where people use the word scientific. Now I'm going to single out someone we weren't talking about. He's going to hate me now just because I can't think of anyone else. He's the first one that came to mind. So Phuket word I love Nick. Nick is brilliant. Let's just make that clear. Nick's videos are excellent. Far better than I can never do. And I've tried to replicate him a couple of times, once in the last day. And he even came and gave me kudos for it. I can't believe it. I'm trying to rip Nick off. And he comes along and says, wow, great video. I love these simple proofs. I'm like, yeah, you're the master of them. But he said, this is real science. Now, I didn't reply to his comment. I appreciate the sentiment of what he was saying, and I really want the support, so I'm very grateful. But ultimately, when he said science, it made me cringe, because I wasn't doing science. I wasn't establishing cause and effect. I didn't have an independent and a dependent variable, the dependent variable being an observed phenomena. That bit is just, I don't have any of that. I've just got an observation. But the obvious and observable nature of our reality is it's flat. Now that's far more powerful than something obscure that needs to have science applied to it in order to establish a cause. Well, there's no need for any of that. It's just obviously flat. And I'll lead this into Anthony now. So the other day Anthony's like, there's the land across the way, it's 34 miles away. I don't know why I can see it. And I was like, slap, slap, slap. What do you mean you don't know why you can see it? You open your eyes and there it is. That's why you can see it. There is no explanation required. They need it to be a phenomena. They need to science it. We don't, as flat earthers. We're just looking at the obvious nature of our world. And it is obvious. It doesn't require science. We don't need to dress up the observation of our reality with words like hypothesis and experiment, because we're not doing that. But anyway, that was what we were talking about before the show. Enough of my bubble. Anything to add before I do housekeeping?
Right.
I think you need to show it on screen, Nathan, because talking about it doesn't do it justice.
Show what? How can I show science?
No, the observation thing that Nick's on about. Because I'm reminding myself of Cat Earth when he used to say things like, yeah, show us the beach, Nathan. And his point is kind of valid in one sense, because I can see why, logically, he would want to see the beach over a long distance. But if Cat Earth were here now, rest in peace his soul, he would have to respond to this and say, oh yeah, maybe you're not going to see the beach after all. Even if it was waveless, you're not going to see the beach on long-distance observations because of the effect that you show with the book. So maybe you should put it on screen and let people see it and talk through it, Nathan, because I think it's worth talking about.
Will do. My mouse has just stopped being paired. Give me a sec.
I mean, just to stick me to, I was asking Nathan's advice, because for me, it is about just taking a step back, reanalyzing the conclusions we've drawn and just reassessing how we describe them. There's no issue with describing something as a logical conclusion. I think the point Nathan was making is we do ourselves more damage by trying to claim something that is a logical conclusion as scientific evidence, and we set ourselves up for a fall down the line. And I think if we can get into the habit of describing things correctly, then that strengthens our case and leaves it less open to attack down the line.
Right, I agree. But how about geometrical deductions?
As long as they don't have a downward force, we're fine with them.
No, it has nothing to do with that. I'm talking about geometry. Is that okay to make claims about that? Because I have found some that are very compelling.
Well, the point I was making there, Owen, is it's fair to make a claim about anything. It's just you have to quantify the strength of that claim, whether it's a logical deduction, a geometric relationship, or a scientifically supported claim. And I think as long as you quantify them, it doesn't greatly matter which it is, as long as you're stating how you're using the claim, and what its support is. It stops it being attackable. It stops them turning around going later, no, that wasn't scientific. If you've already said this is a logical deduction and not claimed it scientific, then...
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about geometry here. Purely.
There's no geometry in a plane though, Arwen, right?
No, there is. There's aspects about it, geometrical aspects. For example, a flat plane has straight lines in all directions, or in basically the horizontal directions. Wow. Yeah, any kind of other globe type or concave hollow globe or any type of other shape other than flat requires geometrical curve. And if you analyze the obstruction rate after the optical slant versus the distance, I will bet you that drop rate versus the distance is linear. And if we can actually confirm this, it will be very interesting to try it out over longer distances.
But how would you get your frame of reference if you can't see the base?
No, but if you can deduce that the drop rate is linear, then it's a straight line. Then it cannot be anything else than flat.
Yeah,
Alwyn.
Like, I mean, like, how do you get your frame of reference when you can't see the base of it? Because of the...
By taking like depends on the object you're using. So you're gonna have to use like pillars eventually for certain distances. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to see it. It's gonna be too thin. And just make them high enough, and then see what you observe when you look at that from a vast distance. So it's gonna be pretty complex, but from what I'm seeing all the time so far, this is what my intuition tells me I'm seeing. That there's a linear drop rate after the obstruction sets in due to diffraction. It's not just a relation with the height, which is clearly defined now, but there's also the distance versus the drop rate, which is linear, I think. So I think that's worth investigating.
Nathan, do you want to talk us through what you showed on screen in terms of the book?
Yeah, sure. So you can probably see now this woman, as she reaches down, I'm lowering the camera, just coincidence she came and picked up this book as I was filming it. But there's various other things that you can reference. So if you look at this piece of tatty wood, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner as I lower the camera. And then as I raise the camera again, it gets more elongated. Now this is the most pronounced on the cupboards. So although the effect of the book doing it, because it's slightly further away, I just extended the distance by going into the next room. When you go up and down, this is the book I'm talking about, it basically vanishes as you raise and lower the camera angle. So I've been calling
Forget the book, you're not seeing her shoes.
Yeah, your shoes, same thing applies. So in the next shot, you see her shoes disappear. So you can still see the tongues, the tops of the shoes, but the rest of her shoes...
The hand is melting into the...
Yeah, it disappears, and it's purely down to the viewing angle. She's in the most limited angle. But if you look at the bottoms of these cupboards, you can see the gap underneath the cupboards shrinks as I go down. So forget the book, because they were like, oh, it's in a different room. I was like, oh, fine, well, look at the cupboards. You can see the black line underneath the cupboards getting thinner as I lower in angle. In other words, it's becoming squashed in the same way as Ranty's boats get compressed as he lowers his altitude. So you can see this getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. See?
Zach was, he made us sit and watch this last night, Zach did, Nathan. He was extolling the virtues of this. That black line's a lovely way of exemplifying.
The other thing I liked about it was there's a couple of bits, I don't know if you can see on the floor, they've just had loads of kids running around, so that's the book I originally was aiming for, although the whole room does it, obviously. I just hadn't thought about it logically when I made the video. I'm just talking about the book, and the whole room does it, obviously. It's all about the angle. But on the far side, because they're old cupboards, they're just that little bit lower over on this side, and therefore you can see the effect far more because the gap disappears to nothing. You know, as I reduce my angle, the angle between you and that gap gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So I did that on.
Let's be clear. This devastates the argument that obstruction is curvature. Devastates it.
Yeah, and I've been waiting for ages to do this. It's just there's never been an opportunity in this hall, but they happen to close up at 11:10 instead of 11:30. So instead of everyone rushing out, see these little bits on the floor though. So if anyone wants to, here you go. See this here. This is tiny. It's like just a tiny bit of dirt on the floor, and they're saying, some of the trolls are like, the floor's not even. It's like, well, you can see how much obstruction you've got from something physically on the floor. It's nothing. You know, they play table tennis on this surface. It may look like it's not very even, but I assure you, it's like you can see the mirror on it. Yeah, it's not absolutely perfect because it's really old. But yeah, you know, there's a club that's pretty fussy about how level the floor is because they play table tennis, and that's where they play because it's nice and level. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this would be great to do a few observations on. Just raise and lower your camera. So I'm sure I said it in the video or yesterday, but I was doing it to see if the room was long enough. because I knew I couldn't get the lens to the floor because obviously the lens is in the phone. And when I do it next to my table, I can prop the lens off the table and put it up against the side of the table so that I've got literally the lens right flush with the base of the table, analogous to when Anthony does his observations. But you can't do that on a floor. I can't dig one of the tiles out and get the lens lower. So you're limited to a certain degree. I think I measured it at 1.7 centimetres. So 17 mil is how high I am. So it's got to be further to get that angle right down. But yeah, I achieved it. I was very pleased with that.
Hey, Nathan, why do some conspiracy people hate John Le Bon?
Why do conspiracy people hate John Le Bon? Because he does good research. I like John Le Bon. I don't know why. I don't know why he titled that.
On screen.
Yeah, I've watched that video. I can't remember the reason why, but I think just people tend to watch his videos and hear him declare something outright based on his research and go, "This guy's an absolute nutter." Yeah, I'm going to go to the other video I did just because it shows.
Oh, by the way, Nathan, can I just draw your attention to Heath Carmody's latest video? It's entitled "Flat Earth Perspective Doesn't Do That," and he has a pair of shoes, and he's directly contradicting your video.
Oh yeah.
So just do a search for Heath Carmody, and then find his video saying "Perspective doesn't do that," and then address it, because we could all sit back and laugh at him.
So if I just spin on to the bit I want to show on this one first. Find it. Here we go. So what we're going to focus on is these in this right-hand corner. So they've still definitely got a gap underneath the cupboards. They're not scraping along the floor. Got the noisy toys today. There you go. I'll just play it over and over again. You can see the gap decrease as I lower the angle. There you go, so the gap gets smaller and smaller. And on the far ones, because it's obviously the furthest distance, because I'm looking across on the diagonal, the effect's even more pronounced. So on the next clip, just any second now, it's me looking diagonally across the room, these ones, and the gap disappears basically to almost nothing. Oh no, maybe not this one, the next one. Here we go, these. So I'm looking the furthest, and you see the gap disappears completely. As I get down to the floor, the gap goes completely. Like the bottoms of Ranty's boats getting completely squashed down to nothing. Well, that gap hasn't vanished. The angle's just decreased. Hey, Jose.
Yo, good morning, guys.
Hi, Jose.
It also, this optical effect, just makes me realize what a disadvantage small animals have visually. Because, yeah, they will not be able to see a lot of things in the distance.
They might have different eyes to us, though, right?
Well,
although I reckon small people, like Ranty, he might have problems with his eyes because he's not tall enough to get past that atmospheric block.
yeah, but,
Do you reckon Ranty sees
animals
anybody's
go by
shoes?
sonics, basically.
No, I don't reckon Ranty's ever seen shoes.
Yeah, Owen, you were talking earlier about formulating this. It's probably worth a chat off air sometime. We're in the process of trying to do something to see whether, and it's something I want Nathan's advice on again in terms of ripping it a new one in relation to scientific methodology of it. But it's something we are looking at. Probably not a chat for now, but maybe off air, have a little chat and I'll go through some of the stuff we've done. We're more looking towards Zach's formula to produce that geometry, but
cool.
Along the same lines, Bob. So yeah, if you're free.
Without wanting to condescend to Anthony, Anthony's just made a statement that maybe needs some explanation, because if he's thinking it, there's obviously others. So he just said, well, Flat Earth doesn't need geometry, and Owen rightly pointed out, well, it is based on geometry. Can you just explain to Anthony why we still need geometry?
Why we need it?
Well, the laws of geometry are there for us to use, aren't they? To deduce.
Yes.
Calculate.
And it's such a basic approach because flat is flat and straight, and yeah, anything else is gonna be not straight. So it's such a open goal basically.
No, I prefer the use. It doesn't matter. It's moot. Nathan, I've sent you a link on Skype. Heath Carmody has done a response video to Jaren and yourself, and basically what he's done is he's modelled it, right? And he's modelled what should happen with perspective.
I couldn't give a crap. I don't care about Heath Carmody's model. I'm not even going to play it. If he'd have actually done it in real world with the camera, I might pay it some attention. Models aren't reality. You can't model every factor in, and I've done it small scale. So beat that, Heath Carmody. I couldn't give a crap what your model says.
That was my point. He's modelled it, right? But you've done it real world, and his model didn't comply with the real world. And what do we know with observations that don't match experimentation? They're wrong.
Yeah, he doesn't have an experiment though. Neither do I. He's got a pseudoscience model. I've got an observation. Well, my observation absolutely trumps his pseudoscience model.
I agree.
Yeah, sorry, Heath. Get out your computer chair and get a camera.
If your model doesn't match the way Nathan's observation and demonstration works, then your model's not working right to reality. It's as simple as that.
I was citing that that professor at MIT or whoever it was, the old guy in the 70s or 80s or whoever, where he says, if it doesn't match systematic experimentation, it's wrong. And he says it literally point blank, categorically. That's what he says. And that's exactly what Heath Carmody's position is.
I'm pretty sure that's a Richard Feynman quote, actually.
Yeah, I think it is.
If it doesn't agree with experimentation, then it's wrong.
Yep. So Heath Carmody doesn't agree with it, but he's done it based on a model. Well, sorry, Heath. Nice try. Might want to remove that video, but we'll know that you leave it up anyway.
I mean, this is something that I mainly did because I couldn't find something that I'd promised Zinder. So I was like, yeah, I'm sure if I wanted to, I could go back and pull it out of one of the live streams because I did present it to the public. But I did this in small scale on my table. And when you can get the angle down to basically nothing by putting the lens up to the table, I can do this in a matter of feet. In other words, this is not a difficult thing to do. Anybody could achieve this. You just reduce the angle to nothing, and then you end up getting obstruction from the bottom up. I've done it with CDs. That's how small a scale I did it on a 3.5 foot table. So this isn't difficult. This isn't magic. And it's certainly, if modelled show that it's not doing it, I don't care. It does do it. I've seen it 100 times. We see it on all these long distance observations. It gets called curvature. That's all we're ever seeing. We're seeing a reduction in the viewing angle causing things to disappear from bottom up as that minimal angle is achieved on the bottom section of whatever it is you're looking at in the distance. It's very simple.
If he cannot model that observation that Nathan did over the long floor, where he put the book and the shoes, he has to do some adjustments in his model, which, it's okay. It's pseudoscience, it's modeling, but it's good work, to model stuff. Only thing is, if he cannot model this observation, which is a real world observation, something is wrong with the program and the modeling, because then he has to add some other factors that is not included, because as I say, if he cannot model a real world observation, something is wrong with the programming,
Yeah. But the problem is, though, now Nathan's basically repeated and validated Jaren's video, which was testing your original assertion. So Jaren's tested the assertion and produced it. You've then validated it systematically by repeating it and doing the same thing. So this basically explains everything to do with all these observations at the horizon, where they all claim any obstruction is curvature. And we were always like, it's not persuasive. There must be something else going on. And for the longest of times, we've not really known what was going on. And it's had numerous different names. And we all knew that we were describing something that nobody really understood. And we didn't know what the actual explanation was. But now we do. And it's because we were all basically resilient, and we carry on batting these ballers off because we're not looking at a curve. It's that simple. So that Soundly observation that Soundly's got, sorry, it's not what's happening. Something else is going on.
think we'll dispense with housekeeping. We'll do it on the next show. That's we're about 25 minutes in already. Seems a bit silly to do housekeeping halfway through the show. Like your new avatar, by the way, Jose. You did mention yesterday who made it for you.
Appreciate it. Hyena. I don't. Let me see if I get his name right. Legendary super looming perspective hijacking hyena, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Legendary super looming perspective hijacking hyena.
He is awesome. Yeah, I got him on Facebook, and he messaged me. He said, "Jose, I got you. I made you an avatar, and I love it." I put it on my YouTube and on the Hangouts. Thank you very much. You're awesome.
A whole bunch of memes about all of us on the debate show. Hi, Event Horizon. Hello.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How you doing?
Very well. Good to have you.
Afternoon.
Nathan, that video you've been showing, I showed it. I just want to jump in quickly. I showed it to a friend last night, and she was blown away. I've now managed to visually show her what this curve wasn't and what the obstruction is and what actually happened. So kudos to you, man. Thank you for that. That was a massive tool that I needed. Thank you.
Pleasure. I had to get around some slightly disconcerted mothers as I was doing it. So I'm sure I've mentioned it, but I was doing it to see if the room was long enough while there was all kids running around. And I'm sort of lowering it and raising it, and there's these mothers coming up to me. What the hell are you doing? Why are you filming the children? I'm not filming the children. I'm filming the floor. What do you mean you're filming the floor? Well, I want to get the angle.
Leave it alone.
A couple of these old dears are like, I was like, I'll explain it if you want. It's really boring. And they were like, no, explain exactly what you're doing. So I'm having to explain this flat earth concept to them. If I move my camera down, I can get something in the distance to disappear as the angle narrows. So it gets into that limited viewing angle, therefore effectively reducing the angular size of the bottom of wherever it is I can see in the distance. So I've put a book over there and I'm going to lower my camera. Hopefully it'll disappear. It's just not quite long enough. And they're like, okay. So I was like, please don't shut the door. Just leave it open. If I'd have just been smart enough, I'd have realised that if I'd have just tilted the camera and done it across the diagonal in the first place, I'd have had enough length to get the angle anyway. But there we go.
I like your logic there, Nathan, of promoting flat Earth. What's the best way to get it into society's consciousness is get it out in the mothers groups. Once you've got it on mums.net, I think you'll be fine. It'll spread the word even faster that way, mate.
Because this embarrassingly reveals that I'm basically a housewife.
I'd be proud of that fact, mate. If I could swap roles with my wife, I'd do it at a drop of a hat.
Fair enough.
Best job in the world, being with your kids.
It does have its
lucky man.
By the way, Adam, whilst you're here, have you seen Sky News today?
Nah, but why? What we got?
I don't normally watch Sky News, but it's been on this morning in the background, right? And you know David Schwimmer, the Friends cast member?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen that in Blackpool. I saw that.
He's had a lucky likey guy that's coincidentally looking like him, right? It's not intentional, but some bloke in Blackpool, right? Not ranty, but but looks like David Schwimmer has been caught stealing a crate of beer, right? And he looked right down the camera lens of the security camera, and he's the absolute image of David Schwimmer, right? And he's had to put a public statement out saying that he wasn't in Blackpool on this day in question. He was in America, right? But what he's actually done, in his great wisdom, is he's recreated the scene in his local offie, and he's gone to the back of the offie, he's nicked the crate of beer, and he's staggered his way out the thing, looked at the camera, and then disappeared. And it's uncanny, the resemblance, man. It is so funny. If you haven't seen it, man, you've got to look at it.
I'll check that after the show.
Kudos to David Schwimmer for being a guy and just recreating this guy stealing. It's brilliant.
I'll echo that because I saw it on a YouTube clip and I was like, kudos. The guy's got a good sense of humour. You know, 1 minute he's being accused of robbing a liquor store in Blackpool. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, Blackpool? Ranty will know who this guy is because he knows everyone in Blackpool, like all us Brits, right? So I thought I'll ask Ranty.
Such a little country.
But how similar is the bloke, Nathan? It's like a spit of him, isn't it?
In the low-res security camera, you could not tell the difference between the two of them. Yeah, very funny stuff. Seeing David Schwimmer nicking stuff. Comical. Must add
in a
that David
slightly
Schwimmer did not
different,
actually
in a
make
slightly
anything.
different. Sorry.
He was actually in Texas, so just to make it clear, David Schwimmer has not robbed any liquor stores. Except when he recreated it, which he should be arrested for.
In a slightly different subject, I heard. I thought the plain truth was just meeting with Mark Doxey over there in Ireland for just as a hangout for themselves and make a little meeting. But I think it's like a big deal, right? Like a big meetup you guys are doing over there.
No,
I heard a mention on
unfortunately not.
Patricia.
I think the two times clash. So I only found this out the other day. I was dropped Mark a line. I was like, "You do realise this is happening the same day there's a load of press in London?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I don't know. I can't remember if I said, "Why don't you just change it and just why don't you fly over to London?" But I don't know. I can't remember if I actually suggested that. If you said that for the first time, I'm sorry, Mark.
Is that the end of the UK tour day?
I think so. Yeah, that's. I don't know if it's the last date, but it's certainly the date that they've got a load of press going because it's in London. Ranty's trying to talk me into it, but I'm struggling for various reasons.
We got interviewed in Nottingham on Monday, mate. As if you've seen the Evening Post, they got me paper in the face in the paper.
Oh wow! Can you show us?
Yeah, if you want.
Let's have a look. Oh, I did not know this. What was it for?
If you go to, it's quite interesting because it's quite. What you can see is how the reporter works. Yeah, we're going to cover it tomorrow, but I'll pull you the piece up. But we're going to show tomorrow. I was filming in Market Square with Roxanne and Harry and that, and bloke wanders up and he says, "You know, I'm from the Nottingham Evening Post. Can we ask you some questions?" So I'm just kind of filming it basically, but you can listen to all the questioning he does to us and the guys trying to clarify the point, and then obviously read the piece as well. And it's, to be honest with you, a bit like Bob's CBS piece, what it was. It's not too bad a hit piece. It's not, the headline's a bit misrepresentative, but the stuff inside, Roxanne was very careful. She didn't want to be described as a flat earther. She wanted to be described as a global denier.
Why not?
Yeah, give me a second, I'll call it up.
What's the problem? What's wrong with being called a flat earther?
It's the same. It's got a stigma to it, hasn't it? It's like saying gravity when it doesn't exist.
Wear that label with pride.
Yeah, I'm the same. Okay. Well,
in case she's listening, Roxanne, the Earth is obviously and observably flat. There's no point denying it.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Am I sharing?
You are! Conspiracy theorists try to convince Nottingham the world isn't round. Round? I think they mean ball. No. Hey, Mark. Ouch. How you doing?
Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Mark.
It's you!
Cool.
Here I am. Didn't quite get the Iron Realm t-shirt out enough. Got my phone in the way. But yeah, me, Roxanne, and then that's Jason of the family Didsbury.
The Iron Realm stick?
Yeah. Had a shave as well, as Anthony noticed.
Good picture.
I recognize Roseanne and Jason in the left. Who's the photo bomber in the right?
Oh, that's me. Bombing in.
Hang on a minute. He's had a shave. It's clearly not yourself. It's Roxanne's had a shave. Clearly not you.
Just one
Adam.
swipe with the razor blade, eh?
Hey, mate, that's the shortest it's been in a long time. But yeah, so
you want to read it?
The article.
You going to read the article?
I'm not a great. I get told off for being monotone, but I will do if you wish.
Yes, please.
Conspiracy theorists were out in force in Old Market Square, determined to prove the world is not round but flat. Armed with leaflets and banners, this is part of an 8-week tour of the UK, with scores of individuals coming forward to spread the word in Nottingham on Monday, October the 22nd. Calling themselves globe deniers and flat earthers, they believe that no one has landed on the moon and that the globe does not exist. They are calling for people to challenge what we know. The tour started in Ireland, incorrect. We did go to great lengths to try and get that right. And it's taken around 40 locations, finishing in London on November the 3rd. Roxanne Glenn, one of the organisers, said, "We are saying, question what you have been taught. We want facts and proof. The Earth is not a globe. It is not as we know it." Jason Didsbury, another organizer, said this is the biggest debate on the internet. No one has been on the moon. Nottingham has been amazing for us. There are a lot of people who believe they are not on this spinning ball. Nottingham has been the best place we have been to. So, end of article. It's quite brief, but
thank God you didn't start
good article.
Stuff like that.
I don't know if there were any Pac-Manners there. I think it's these guys are very zetetic, and it was literally what is observable and what is provable. So, yeah. No theory. I think they were very conscious of that, not being, certainly with the press, not going into personal theories of how you see it. They were sticking to what's demonstrable, what's scientifically provable, and what are quite clear lies and contradictions. And that was really an intelligent focus, not being drawn into, well, what's your model?
Picking a map or something like that, because
yeah,
that's where the English conference went wrong, wasn't it? I think everybody will agree that the three guys with Phil Schofield, regardless of whether it's flat or not, to start like being conjecting about what you think it might be is just silly. Let's not do that. Let's just say it's not what we're told. That's it. Don't push it any further than that.
Yeah, and certainly that's my position. I think certainly when you're engaging with people, with friends, it's perfectly okay to theorize because you know you're theorizing. But I think when you're flat smacking or you're talking to anyone, stick to the facts of what is provable. And that's your strongest. That's your strongest argument, rather than. And we were asked a number of times, well, what do you think it is? That's the constant thing. And myself and the guys, are all saying, well, it's not about replacing a paradigm. It's about accepting that what you're being told is demonstrably incorrect.
Well done. That is definitely the way forward. Sorry,
what's wrong with saying it's a flat plane?
Oh, no. So I was quite clear in saying it is, and you'll hear me, Nathan, you would have been proud, it's obviously and observably flat. But as you would say, you can't state that scientifically. But what we can say is that, and that all the models fail, the ball models fail. So I think the Spurs was criticising Dave this morning for being a bit more outlandish and making statements and stuff, and being a bit. They was singing as well, I think, was what he was criticising.
Which Dave are we talking about? Sorry, which Dave?
Dave Mannon, South African Dave.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was down with. I think they're in Ipswich today. I think or somewhere. So, he was down there. And for me, I mean, it's all styles. If you want to go out there and make those statements, it's up to you. But I think the strongest argument when we're trying to open people's eyes is to just point out the lies.
Yeah. It's all good.
Well done, guys.
Good stuff. So that concludes. Where is it on the 3rd? Where is it in London? Where exactly?
I don't know.
Anybody?
I don't know. We've got Roxanne and the guys on TFR tomorrow morning, so I'm sure you'll be able to find out there at 10 on
Hopefully someone will tell us in the chat so we can at least plug it. I'm really sorry, Roxanne. Yeah. I'm really, really sorry. We should know this. Yeah, 3rd of November. Check it out. It's in London. Obviously, London being very, very small. And, you'll stumble on it, obviously.
Be in the city centre.
In the city centre? That's where it is. That's where I'm pretty sure they said. Yes, that's right. City centre, London. Easy to find.
Hey, gentlemen, we're okay here in Dublin. We're going to have a good time.
Good stuff.
Oh,
did you know it clashed?
No, I didn't know it was clashing. No, it was. We took an opportunity because Paul on the plane and Travis is going to be in Ireland that weekend, so we just.
It's just one of those, and it's a bit of a shame, but I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time. Hope you get loads of people there.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. You're looking forward to it, Travis? He's not listening.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Really looking forward
to it.
No,
I am. I'm just shooting the sky right now. I was shooting the sun with my infrared and I was trying to catch some contrails And right now I'm just trying to track this airplane that's flying, so I was a little bit distracted. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Doing serious scientific stuff.
Yeah, I bought an infrared lens.
Oh, awesome.
Science.
Could you stream it live?
That was your opportunity to plug your event a bit more, Mark, by the way.
I was just about to ask, because I'm not what's going off and where in Dublin, and
We're having hopefully our first meetup of flat earthers and light conspiracy theories. As I say, Paul on the plane is going to be over. He's visiting the family, and so him and Travis were discussing, well, let's do something because they're in Ireland together at the same time. So we're just going to have a meetup, and we'll be with you in spirit. If anybody wants to come along, please come along, say hello, stay as long or as little as you want. Be glad to see you.
Where is it? Where is it?
I was going to say, can you send the details? I've got a good friend in Dublin, and I'll give him a bit of grief and try and get him to. Certainly.
Smashing. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put the YouTube link in. We're advertising on YouTube, so I'll put that link in now. Will you be able to pick it up from there?
Yeah, but just tell us verbally so it goes out to the audience where exactly.
Yeah, okay. It's in the centre of town. It's a 5-star hotel.
Get you.
But it's only a meetup, so we're not actually hiring any rooms. We're just going to we've asked for permission to meet in one of their bars, and they've said yes.
Is that Paul on the plane's insistence to not?
What's the name? What's the name of the hotel?
It's called the Westin, Wistin, and it's in the centre of town, just off O'Connell Street. But it's all the details are in the video. It's a 5-star hotel. It's right alongside the River Liffey. It's a beautiful hotel, and Nora has been in the background doing all the footwork for us. So a big shout out to Nora. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have Westins in the US as well.
That's right. It's the same. It's the same syndicate.
Excellent. It's a good hotel.
Well, enjoy the crack then, mate. Sounds like it'll be a good day.
Yeah. Thank you, Guinness.
Yep. Enjoy the crack. Can't get enough of the crack. Very Moorish.
Yeah.
All right, so I expect you guys to go with your P900s over there in Ireland to some sea area and in a shoreline and record some stuff for us and present us very soon.
Yeah, we're going to go curve hunting.
You're going to get the Isle of Man.
Aren't there like folklore of giants in Ireland?
Yeah, you can probably get the Isle of Man, can't you?
I've got a few videos of the Isle of Man on my channel. You can check that out.
I've seen yours, Mark, from... I shared those with Declan in Ireland when I went over there at Easter.
All right.
Your one's from the Bay, wasn't it?
The Bay? What the Belfast Lock, and then swinging around the corner to the Irish Sea and looking across towards England and Scotland.
I'm sure those are the ones I've seen. Oh, early on in your channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My channel's only about 6 months old, but I'm working away on it.
Talking of channels getting certain ages, well, not channels, but this show will be 12 months old on Saturday. So, 12 months of non-stop daily live streams. I think there's been 2 days, through no fault of my own, that I just could not do the show on those days. But other than that, every single day I've had at least a couple of shows. Couple of hours of shows. So yeah,
I mean,
hopefully you'll get a good turnout on Saturday.
It's quite an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, respect, fella. Respect. That's a hell of a lot of commitment.
And to be honest, we've learned an awful lot over this last year. I mean, I've only been watching since about 100, probably about 150, but still, it's gone on for a long time, and the knowledge that's been passed around and the things we found out. Yeah. Thanks, Nathan. And Anthony as well, and everybody else who's regular on the panel, Alvin and and yourself. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. It's all pat ourselves on the back. It's all down to the people who join the panel and watch, more importantly. If there wasn't an audience, nobody would be here. So, as much as I give grief to the trolls, every single person who's in the audience right now is absolutely a valued member of the audience. So 218 of them. It's all down to you guys for tuning in more than anything else. I won't deny it. So thank you very much. Hopefully you'll all join me on Saturday and we'll celebrate a year of flat earth debates. Awesome stuff. Also, I'm going to do one more plug. Why not? You guys have plugged loads of stuff. So this evening, about a couple of hours after the show finishes, so for us here in the UK it's 4 PM. At 6 PM, so a couple of hours later, John and myself will do another science versus pseudoscience. This time it'll be on logical fallacies. I'm really, really looking forward to this show. I already know what's in the show, so I've got good reason to be excited, and you should definitely watch it. If you're a fan of the debates, you will love this science versus pseudoscience. It will be exceptionally good.
I'm
Yeah,
super
in my
excited about
opinion,
this.
best subject so far. Don't get me wrong, I love all the science stuff. Great, wonderful. But this specific subject, the logical fallacy, showing people where incorrect logic can be found, because that takes you to the correct logic. It's as simple as that. So knowing where people deceive you and use fallacies is the key to finding out how you can find true logic, the reality of your situation. Get my tongue around it.
What time's that, Nathan? 6?
6 PM UK time.
Cool.
Definitely looking forward to that.
Tried to convince John to do it at the end of the last show, but he wouldn't have it. He was like, "No, I'll do it separately." I was like, "I'll just start a new show," and he's like, "No."
How long do you think the show's going to be? How long do you think? Like an hour to cram it all in, or an hour and a half?
Probably about an hour. They usually are. You know, ideally, I'd have them all be half an hour. That would be my ideal length of any particular show. But you know, audience demands longer, and there is more to talk about it than half an hour would probably permit with logical fallacies. But it's basically taken the main overriding fallacies, because a lot of fallacies actually sit under a different category of fallacy. So he's going to cover the main ones. There are a couple of exceptions that got added, you know, like the reification fallacy. I asked him to add that as an extra, although it does sit under a different bracket. But there's a couple like that. But most of them are the main brackets of logical fallacies. So you could probably, you know, sit every single one underneath all of these categories. Yeah, about an hour, I would guess.
You could be making them flat Earth related, or is it just going to be in general?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they'll be related to flat Earth.
Awesome.
They'll be formulated with flat Earth examples, let's put it that way. So there'll be the logical fallacy, and some are formal, some are informal, but either way, they'll get the explanation of what it is, and then an example, which will more likely than not be a familiar example that you will have heard if you've tried to debate a globehead about this subject. So it will definitely resonate with people who are into this subject.
So it's directly applicable then, that's awesome.
Yeah, directly. Yeah. Directly applicable to the debate and directly applicable to the conversations we've had on the debate with globeheads, where they have formulated their, let's put it, I can't put it in air quotes, no one can see, but in air quotes, proof of a sphere.
Can I bring up the physics of the full moon?
Go ahead.
So just to throw it out there for us to discuss, last night was a full moon here in the States, and I got out of my truck right when the moon was coming up over the horizon. And so I just was thinking about it again. The sun had just gone down, so the sun is over the horizon to the south, and the moon is coming up over the horizon to the north. And without making any direct observations that I recorded, they were pretty much 180 degrees from each other. So the question would be then, right, how is the moon illuminated by the sun if the earth is between the moon and the sun? Is it that simple?
You're asking a very big question. I doubt anyone will give you an answer. Was it rhetorical?
I'm simply just asking a question about the model, right, about the system. It's the same thing that we talk about with the termination line. So if my first observation with the termination line back in November, the termination line would require the source, if the moon is lit by the sun, the termination line would require that the sun was above the moon, but the moon was clearly 70 degrees above the sun. And so you just look at it and think, okay, the geometry doesn't work. So my question is just the basics of what we're told and what we're looking at. I would say that if the Earth is between the sun and the moon, then the full moon wouldn't have been possible last night.
Okay, so it's in reference to the heliocentric model. Fine. If I had a penny for every time someone had said this does not work with the sun and the moon, and then I got someone to model it in the heliocentric model, only to find that it absolutely did work. Shout out to the Mind of God. Happy early anniversary. Thank you very much. Hopefully see you Saturday. So yeah, it was time and time again, and I've even done it myself. I've said, this shouldn't work based on the globe model. And then you plot it in, and lo and behold, it does. The model's more elegant than us flat earthers give it credit for. You know, I know it's got its flaws, and yes, there are definitely flaws in the model. But certainly things like this, in my experience, I'm not saying it's true for this particular example, but in my experience, you model it out and it turns out to be spot on. The heliocentrists have got it pretty much pegged.
Their astronomical model, basically.
Can we talk about
it has been perfected.
Sorry, go on, Owen.
The astronomical parts of the model are perfected into absolute detail like that.
Yeah,
but the rest of the entire setup, that's where the holes start to appear.
Yeah, if you take the mechanics is like Nathan says, it's pretty much spot on. But it's when you look at, okay, so the moon's where it should be, the shadow's correct, the illumination's correct in terms of placement, but actually the luminosity that you're receiving and of the moon is an impossibility. The illumination the moon gives out is an impossibility in terms of inverse square law. So if you explore it in further detail, that's where the holes are. But I don't think there's any holes necessarily in the geometries.
There's a few, I'm sure.
Astronomy is all about geometry.
I'm sure there's several planets that shouldn't be seen half the year that are seen, and it makes no sense in their model. There are definitely holes in it. Like if you know where to look for them, there are holes. But on the whole, it's a pretty good model, you know. But as Arwin points out, that's mostly because they've been observing it. Well, given the history hoax stuff that's currently being talked about, I'm hastened to say they've known about it for ages, because they may not have, but it's certainly on the surface, according to the mainstream narrative, the case that they've known what the stars do, and they are cyclical for a very long time, so to work them mathematically isn't that much of a stretch. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, go on, Anthony.
Oh, sorry. Talk about someone that definitely is impossible on their model, right? Just present my screen for me, please, Nath. So Nick pointed this out in his video, and I'm just going to reassert it because it's fantastic.
Oh, this is an excellent video. Who made this?
Someone by the name. I don't know who he is. I've never heard of him before.
It's me. I made this. This is great.
Some bloke.
I've seen it, but I'm getting bored of it now.
Now, basically, there was an argument here started by some other bloke that I don't know. I think he's got about 75,000 subs. Oh, no, that's Simon Dan. Anyway, down here somewhere, there's this guy called Nithio, and he's a ball earther. Check this out. Do a search for foil boat in a tank of air, and you'll see your air pressure with no container, right? So if you think about what he's actually putting here, right, he's talking about the sodium hexafluoride, and he's talking about when they fill up the fish tank full of it, and then they float the tin foil, which we've covered loads of times. Trouble is, he's talking about a tank of air, and you'll see your air pressure with no container. So let's all do a slow clap for this Nithio Zero guy, because he's failed to realize that the tinfoil boat in a tank of air is the container. So he's demonstrating the whole point of the container and then declaring that there's like no container. So everybody do a slow clap for Nithio Zero. What a moron.
I thought that one really well demonstrated how the law of entropy is never defied. Even your stopping diffusion, bottom, left, right, that's all the sides, there still is slow diffusion, because that boat eventually sinks. There is slow diffusion, and it's a good example for me of how entropy law will never be denied, even if you try to contain it.
You've misinterpreted what he does. When you say that boat eventually sinks, he fills it up with sodium hexafluoride and makes it drown. Makes it like he capsizes it with water, with sodium hexafluoride, right? It doesn't sink on its own volition.
No, what I mean is you leave that where it is and come back the next day, there'll be no sodium hexafluoride in that tank.
Oh, I'm not sure that's the case.
Any evidence to support
hold
that?
on. I'm not sure that's the case. Why would you say that? It's more dense, far more dense than the air that's surrounding it. It is... to suggest that it would just flow over the top for no reason. Why
No. It's latent heat. The latent heat of vaporization, eventually... the air moving over that will agitate molecules, carry them away. So eventually, it will all evaporate off. It's just like filling it with water. Eventually,
but it's a gas already.
Yeah, so it doesn't require as much latent heat of vaporization as, say, a water molecule would to evaporate off the surface and be carried away in the air.
I'm not going to challenge you on this because you're a chemist and you know far more about this than I do. But okay,
the point is, it's sticking to the law of entropy. So even though you've contained it everywhere bar the top surface, the law of entropy acts up there, okay, and diffusion will slowly, at a much slower rate, but it doesn't defy what they're claiming it does defy.
Okay, I have got one question then, because my understanding of that particular compound was it's so complex, which is what gives it its mass, i.e. it's far more complex of a combination of molecules, therefore it's so much more dense as a consequence. So how does that evaporate? That's beyond my scope of imagination at this point.
Okay, so to put simply, water, even if you put a little saucer of water out, it never gets to 100 degrees and evaporates, but it'll disappear, won't it?
Yeah.
And that's because individually, on a molecular level, some of those water molecules take energy off of each other and from the atmosphere, and that gives them enough sufficient energy to get what's called latent heat of vaporization, which allows them to leave the surface and become vapor and then interact as vapor in the air on a molecular level. So that's why that little saucer of water eventually evaporates.
But hold on. But the sulfur hexafluoride's already, it's not got any bonds. It's already a gas. So why would...
Yeah.
So...
And it's sitting in that vessel by the fact that it's more dense, so it's forced its way down and forced the air out. Okay, but what I'm saying is, over time, entropy of the energies involved will eventually take all of that hexafluoride out because it isn't a sealed container. So there is no pressure in there.
I see. In the same way as I could put a concrete block out and apply the same logic to it, but it would happen far more rapidly than a concrete block. Is that what you're saying?
The analogy of what they're trying to say as gas pressure in there isn't really gas pressure. The analogy from a physics calculation point of view would be the same as water pressure. It'd be like filling it up with water because it's the same physical interactions that are happening because of the constrainment. So it's almost acting like a fluid in relation to the air already.
Right, so despite the lack of molecular bonds, it's still, in terms of its volumic mass, like a liquid.
Yeah, because and that's why you can contain it, because it is acting more like the relative densities of the air and it are such that it acts almost like a liquid, even though by definition it's not. But the way in which its physical properties behave in air is you can pour it, put simply, like a liquid, can't you?
I mean, the one thing I noticed is when they did, you say pour it, they didn't pour it, they pumped it into the container, and obviously when they pumped it, it was being pumped at a higher pressure than its natural pressure in atmospheric conditions. So they had to put a lid on, because when they were increasing the pressure of that gas, it would have just flown out into the room if they hadn't have put a lid on.
Yeah. Okay, I was thinking of a slightly different one. I've not seen this one, which is this. Oh no, this is blown under a vacuum. Yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about this if I can, Nathan. Are we at
You
the
can,
end
but
of that
I got a
point, or
copyright
am I
strike
into it?
last time I played this, so just if you do play it, only play a couple of seconds at a time.
No, I'm not going to play all of it. I'm just going to show clips of it.
Okay, tell me when you want me to present you.
Basically, what? Yeah, now. So,
Go ahead.
with regards to the egg and the water thing, and everyone talked about that for a while, I was having a conversation with, I think it was, I can't remember who it was, and basically he said to me, what would happen if you had a vacuum chamber, threw it off a mountain, and then you had the helium inside that was on the floor, with the helium rise or whatever. We had some scenarios where we were talking about, could we make an accelerating frame of reference on the outside, and would the vacuum be isolated from the accelerated frame of reference, so that it would act independently of itself regardless of the accelerating frame of reference? And it was hypothetical. It was like, well, what would happen if? And I was like, I'm not sure what would happen. I'd have to think about it. So what I've done is I've gone away and I found this video where what he's doing is he's got water in the vacuum chamber, but he's got a little helium balloon inside the water. And what he's trying to do is he's got a weight attached to the helium balloon. And what he's testing is if he removes all the air out of the helium, out of the vacuum chamber, is the helium inside the balloon that's inside this medium, does it still retain its relative state? So really it's a question of, is it relative buoyancy? Is it relative density when it's in a vacuum? Basically what he shows is that when he puts the balloon attached to a small water jar, when he puts it inside the chamber, what happens is he starts sucking out all the air from the vacuum chamber, and the helium balloon still picks up the weight when there's no vacuum in the chamber at all. So what this is showing is that the density of the water that the helium balloon is in, when you remove all the air out of the vacuum chamber, I don't know how he triggers it. I think he does it with a magnet or something. I've not watched it. I can't remember what the trigger mechanism was, but the point was that the balloon, when it gains in size, because it's now inside the water and it's inside the vacuum chamber, it lifts this up. And the way I interpret this is that relative to the medium that the balloon sits in, if you change the density of the balloon relative to the medium it's in, make it more buoyant, then it'll pick the water up. But to do that is use the vacuum chamber to do it. So for me, it's demonstrating brilliantly relative density, because the relative density of the balloon relative to the water it's in, he's able to manipulate the balloon by the vacuum chamber, change its density and lift it up, and it's all being done inside the vacuum. So it's like, this is perfectly demonstrating relative density. And the question again is, well, where's the gravity? And the answer is, well, if it's always pervading and it's always there, well, how do you explain this when everybody seems to want to use vacuum chambers to try and make points? I think it's a non-sequitur point in any event. But when you do put something inside a vac chamber and then you have different densities that are relative to each other, and you start manipulating them, and they do the same thing, and it's a problem. It seems to me that this is basically totally supporting the relative density position, because the relative density of the balloon is relative to the water in which it's in, regardless of which medium the container sits in. It's just beautiful. So just check it. Balloon underwater in a vacuum chamber. It's well worth watching.
And with that, I'm going to say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. If you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you have not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Da-da-dun, da-da-dun. Good show.
Yeah, interesting.
It wasn't the demo I thought.
Randy's in chat.
Where'd you get that demo?
No, we were talking about it in it was in your after hangout, not last night, the night before, and I was just trying to find another example what happen if, and I found one, and I was like, cool. So the balloon, if it's submerged in water, it'll still expand and it'll pick up weights if you change the medium around it by removing the atmosphere. It's just a cool. I found it just by looking for it. I didn't think anybody had actually done it.
Nobody died. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah, it's good.
Where does this leave you with your egg in the salt solution then, Anthony?
It doesn't really change anything. Apart from the egg's got a little pocket of air in it, and you could change the density of the air, the egg, by putting the water that it sits in the vacuum. You could manipulate the density of that air inside the egg if the water was open to the vacuum. But if you sealed it so that it wasn't open to the atmosphere to the vacuum, then it wouldn't do anything. I think it would still work the same way that the balloon does. That balloon was open to the vacuum. It was just submerged in water. It's a cool experiment. Well, cool. Yeah, it is an experiment, I suppose.